Club news, transfer news, match previews, legend interviews, Spurs winning, press conferences, covering everything Tottenham and England.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. In this edition, we'll be talking about the Tottenham Hotspur game against Everton at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. Of course, it will be our second Premier League game of the new season. We're currently live on YouTube, on X and on Facebook, so please do get involved. Tell us how you are feeling right now as a Spurs fan. And if we do have any Everton fans in, tell us how you're feeling as well after the 3-0 home defeat against Brighton at the weekend. I'm absolutely delighted to bring back to the channel Everton fan and, of course, part of the Unholy Trinity Everton Podcast. Mike Richards is with me. Mike, very welcome to have you. Where are you? How are you?
Not too bad, mate. Thank you. Yeah, just saying, and wasn't I? Another fantastic start of the season for ourselves. I think we're used to it by now. Very, very slow starters, but after what's been a bit of a negative week across the board, I think we're semi-looking forward to getting back to the football.
Mike, of course, Spurs take on Everton at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. Spurs drew 1-1 against Leicester Monday evening. As I've already mentioned very early on, you guys lost 3-0 at home against Brighton. Just talk us through, before I get your opinion on the mood and how things are amongst the Everton fans at the moment, talk us through that 3-0 home defeat. That must have been pretty hard to take on the opening weekend.
It was, yeah. A game that we all thought was winnable. For the first game of the season, you want to be at home, and we were. We've asked to be away for our final game of the season. So obviously, looking very, very far ahead, the final game at Goodison Park ever will be held in that penultimate game of the season. So it was a game we thought that we could win, certainly get something from. And to be honest, until Brighton scored, we were the better side. Had chances, had a goal disallowed. Looked, the energy was there. We were our closing down and pressure was there. We were causing them to make mistakes, especially with their high line as well. But then obviously a bit of a sucker punch. But they're a good side going forward. They got quality with Minte, with Matoma, with Welbeck and João Pedro, and those kind of players can always hurt you with the pace as well. But at half time, well in the game, come out second half, get given a penalty, gets overruled. Which is a bit of, again, a kick in the teeth. But, it's mistakes again. Second goal, Garnegay, sloppy pass, gives the ball away. All our back four just retreat and Welbeck walks through and scores. And at that point, even before Young gets himself sent off, it was an uphill struggle. But I think that, the fallout after the game, it was, very, very negative. People calling for the manager's head and things like that. And a bit of an overreaction, really, given the fact, what he's done for us since he's been there, the fact that we were well in the game up until that second goal, the fact we've got quite a few injuries, which we'll go into shortly, which has been added to as well as of today. So we're stretched. We know that. We know we can't do all the work in the transfer market because of the current financial situation at the club. But yeah, after the game itself, very, very sort of downhearted, and it was a lot of negativity Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and it's only just started to calm down a touch. But then Sean Dyche spoke again today in his press conference, and it started again. So it's been a bit of a tough week, to be honest.
Mike, for the Spurs fans that don't really know Everton's financial situation or know anything about the club being sold, can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, current situation. Obviously, over the summer, the Friedkin group, the ones who own Roma, they had signed an agreement with Farhad Mashiri, to basically hopefully come to a deal. It didn't happen. The main reason why is over the course of the last sort of 6 months or so, we were very reliant on 777 partners, a company who are currently going through a lot of fraud things, should we say, in the United States, a lot of criminal things going on. So they lent us £200 million over a number of months while they were trying to buy the club. And because of what's happening in the US in regards to the legal side of things with 777 and potential bankruptcy and things like that, the Friedkin Group wouldn't agree to buy the club. We're now in a situation where John Textor, who owns 45% of Crystal Palace, is basically said that he wants to buy the club. He's in talks with Farhad Mashiri. He was in the city this week. as well. There's talk that it might be an agreement could be reached by the end of the week. We know though what happens if we get to that particular point. We could be in the same boat again, where he starts going through the books, does his due diligence, and then the 777 problem appears again. So it's a sticky situation. We seem to be reliant on loans off certain groups and certain people to get us through. Obviously, Bramley-Moore is a saving grace, and the new ground on the banks of the Mersey there is nearly ready in terms of, a lot of the internal fittings now going out. We will have the keys in December, and then obviously all eyes on then the following season for the move in. But obviously that's very much seen as the silver bullet when it comes to increasing revenue at the club. But we need the off-field stuff sorted. We need some clarity. It's hard for the director of football to know where they can go in terms of transfers, because it's very much, we're reliant on selling players to be able to bring players in and look to do cut price deals and do deals where we're paying installments off, maybe starting next season as opposed to this season, and small down payments and loans and what have you. So it's tricky because, we've got money coming in obviously from Sky and from transfers. Farhad Moshiri has been very reluctant to put his hand in his pockets, hence why he's been going to people to get these crazy loans at crazy interest rates. But he did say a few months ago, if he has to basically start to fund the club again, he will do. But I think, even with the Textor talk, I think you're looking at probably January by the time that officially goes through, if it happens, because he's got to sell his shares in Crystal Palace because he can't own two football clubs in the same division, of course. So I think that might be another loan situation to get us through to that particular point. Does it then go through? Who knows? There's so many things going on. But effectively, we need someone to come in and basically go, listen, I'll sort all that out, pay all that off, and we'll start afresh. That's not going to happen. It's not an ideal. And it's still very, very tricky. We're still trying to navigate sort of month by month almost. And that's why I say, Sean Dyche particularly has done a particularly good job, because, last season especially, he's dealt with 2 points deductions. He's dealt with the issues surrounding ownership. Obviously, the chairman passed away. There was all issues. We've still got an interim board, which we've had in place for 12 months. Interim boards don't stay in place for 12 months. They stay in place for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe, not 12 months. So he's dealt with a lot. But off the field stuff certainly overshadows obviously what happens on the field. But as we've shown in the last 2 or 3 seasons, we come together as a fan base, we do our job, and we try and get this side through. And we're hopeful it's going to be a little bit more of a sort of normal and non-dramatic season for ourselves this season. We certainly feel there's a bit more balance to the squad when all the players are fit compared to last season. But obviously getting to that point where all the players are fit is a little bit of a way off at this moment in time, given the fact we've got quite a few injuries as we speak today.
Mike, you mentioned the new stadium. Of course, I've been down to Bramley-Moore Dock a couple of times. Looks great. It's going to be very, very different this time next year, isn't it, when you move into the new stadium? Because, of course, Spurs moved stadiums. We moved into the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in 2019, of course, on the same site as White Hart Lane. So the match day routines for everyone is virtually the same as what it was before. It's going to be different for you guys. How are you feeling ahead of that move to the new ground? Because Goodison Park is such an historic ground, isn't it, in the UK?
Of course. I mean, it's a fabulous ground. You've probably been there yourself a fair few times. It's an old football ground. It's built as they used to be built. The first 3-tiered stand in a football stadium in this country, with obviously the main stand goes to the top balcony. Nothing like it in this country, and it's almost one of the last great old stadiums in a way. So obviously, as Everton fans, we've only ever known that particular stadium. No one else has gone anywhere else. We've been there for so long. So hopefully, fingers crossed, fans can appreciate, and I think we do. Speaking to fans all the time and trying to get a feel of things, it's very much a case of maybe we don't want to leave, but we know that we've got to leave, and that's the real sad thing about it. If you could renovate Goodison Park and make it into a modern stadium that we're getting in Bramley-Moore, then we'd all go for that. But I just don't see that happening, to be honest with you. Well, it's not going to happen. We've looked at plans over many, many years in terms of we've looked at other areas of the city. We've looked at saying, can we renovate the area, Goodison Park? you know how tight it is when we look at the housing around the stadium. You know, it's tight when it comes to, there's a school on one side as well. The only bit of space you've got is behind the park and the stand. But even then, I think part of that land we don't even own. So there's many issues there. So the only thing that we could do was move. You know, we've had a few failed moves over the years, whether it be the one the King's Dock, which is again on the dock in Liverpool. Money was apparently ring fenced, didn't happen. We looked at going to Kirby, which was the fans were not happy with, which sits outside the city limits. There was potential talk of Stanley Park and a potential apparent ground share with Liverpool. Again, didn't happen. We looked at Walton Hall Park, which is just down the road from Goodison Park. This is the best site by a country mile, just because of the fact, you know, it's right on the waterfront. You know, I was over at the water last week in a place called New Brighton, and you know it lines up now. The skyline is what it is in terms of, you've got the line of buildings, you've got the Three Graces, you've got the Albert Dock. You move further along and it goes to Bramley Moor, and it looks sensational. So as a fan base, we know we've got to move. I think we're excited. I'm certainly excited. You know, it's going to be a different match day routine. Hopefully we can we embrace it. I'm sure we will. I mean, a lot of work's gone in by the architect and by those building it to make sure that the acoustics are absolutely spot on and the sound stays in and doesn't escape. It's going to be very, very windy, as you can imagine down there. It's going to be very cold. It's going to be very wet on those winter days. But to keep that noise in, to keep the weather out, that's what it's all going to be about. And obviously a fantastic looking stadium, nothing like it in the country. You know, I've always said that Tottenham Stadium is the best in the Premier League. You know, I've been there myself. I think it's a fantastic stadium, but different, you know, very much built in mind. You've obviously got the NFL contract and things like that. So it's different in that sense. Ours looks a little, you know, totally different, but it's got that traditional red brick because of the area that it's in, with the docks. It's then got like a spaceship on top of it in terms of all the silver cladding which goes around. So it's a totally different looking stadium. Fantastic looking stadium. It's got the home end, like you've got a big home end as well. So incredible. We wanted more seats, to be honest with you. We're getting 52,888, I think it is the official count. But we were saying, you know, listen, let's get to 60, you know, no problem. But they've gone for that. There's restrictions in terms of the north end, which is the other end of the stadium, because that's a treatment plant behind it, so they couldn't go any further back. But listen, it's a special stadium. There's lots of little nods to Goodison Park. There's lots of nods to our history. There's lots of nods to the history of the area, the heritage of obviously the dock area. So we're excited. I'm excited. We're nearly there, and within a few months we'll be getting an idea of where we're going to be sitting and where we want to sit when we move our season tickets across from Goodison Park to Bramley Moor.
It's exciting. I'll tell you, I actually did the tour of Goodison Park last year, and it looks very, very tight and narrow, that tunnel. I tell you what, when you walk down it, it is extremely tight and narrow. I couldn't believe it. How you get two teams down there walking out in a Premier League game is incredible. Mike, when is the plan to demolish Goodison Park? Is that pretty much straight away when you move in to the new stadium?
Yeah, I mean, the plans obviously are there for what they're going to be doing post-move, basically. I think based on what I've heard, obviously we've got the penultimate game of the season, which is at Goodison Park against Southampton, because I think they want all eyes on Goodison Park as opposed to the last weekend of the season when anything can go on, can't it? So I think there's talk of a little sort of mini festival maybe on the pitch. You know, a few days going to the bank holiday weekend, so maybe a couple of weeks after there's going to be a few music events. Maybe that's, you know, the residents have heard murmurings of that. So I think, though, I assume pretty quickly after they want to get into doing what they're going to be doing with the land, and you know, we've already put plans out there in terms of it's going to be turned into affordable housing, community business enterprise schemes, obviously medical facilities and things like that as well. Very much though for the community to still attract people to the area. So I assume they want to try and do it as quickly as possible. It's very much probably going to be on the council as well, you know, or you know, whoever's going to start the building work off. But it's going to be very, very strange in terms of driving around that area, you know, looking from the top end of Stanley Park down and not seeing Goodison Park. It's going to be a very strange experience. But Everton are committed to the area. We've got a mental health centre there. There's a free school there up there as well. There's community facilities already, which bear Everton's crest, and it's part of our charity, Everton Community. This is almost going to be an extension of that, but also giving back to the community, because let's not forget, the area in terms of businesses on County Road especially are going to really, really feel it. There's no way of replicating 40,000 people coming to the area every other week. You just can't do that with the best will in the world. And, we're trying to get back and make sure we've still got a bit of a footprint within the community. Hopefully that is the case, and, businesses can survive. But, we are starting to see a few of the businesses in terms of the bars buying up plot or buildings and land in and around Bramley-Moore, so they can move themselves down there for the big kickoff next season. So the work, going back to the question, you'd assume they want to start the work pretty quickly, but obviously we know these things can sometimes never be as quickly as people would like.
One of our viewers here, Mike King Hoddle, writes, Everton deserve a new stadium. They're a massive club. Now, how would you describe Everton right now in the last couple of years? Because it's fair to say that there have been some struggles in the last couple of years. You've gone through various different managers, very similar to Spurs, actually, with the amount of managers that you've gone through in recent times. What's the mood like at the moment amongst the Everton fan base? And what are the expectations for this season under Sean Dyche?
I think, prior to the Brighton game, where people lost their minds, as I said earlier on, post-match, I think most people would have said the same thing. In and around maybe between 11th and 13th will probably be what we think. There's been, we've done pretty well in the transfer market early on. We still know that there's probably, I'd say, 2, 3, 4 areas that we still need to address, which we might address one of them before the window closes. But I think there was certainly a bit more calm before the season kicked off. I'd say that we weren't going into the season in a blind panic. We felt we've got a bit more balance to the squad. We felt the players that have been brought in, the likes of Iliman Ndiaye and Jesper Lindstrom, especially players with a bit of pace and a bit of guile who can carry the ball, is exactly what we needed, because Everton have been notoriously a slow side, to be honest. And that's always been our biggest concern as a fan base, is that, when it comes to going to someone like Spurs and we look to play on the counter-attack, we haven't got the players to play on the counter-attack because we're too slow. Dwight McNeil technically is not a bad player, but he's very, very slow. Jack Harrison a bit quicker, but we need players who can, come onto the pitch and affect things. So I think from that perspective, we feel a bit more optimistic. We feel things, as much as the off-the-field stuff hasn't been sorted out, we feel things have calmed a little bit. I think the closer we get to Bramley-Moore, we know it's the funding's sorted now in terms of it's going to be totally funded. They've scraped it together over the years, from Farhad Mashiri to various other people throwing bits of money at it. It's sorted, we know that, so we can focus on moving into there in 12 months. But the important thing for us is make sure we get there as a Premier League side. And as I say, I think when you lose the first game of the season, when there's been such a big build-up and fans are being whipped up, I obviously go to Goodison Park last weekend and there was a buzz around the place. I was there really early and fans couldn't wait to get in. There was a great atmosphere before the game because it's our last season there. So we've all been whipped up and to get in there, can't wait to get in there. So when you do lose and you do come down from that high, you always seem to come down a bit of a bang and you seem to maybe over-dramatise things a touch. But I think there is a bit more optimism, as much as fans are sort of kicking off a little bit this week. I think there is a little bit more optimism, a bit more calm. And if you step back, it does appear to be a bit calmer around the club. Sean Dyche said the same itself. So I think in and around mid-table, sort of top of the bottom half is what we're probably expecting this season.
Mike, did you watch Monday Night Football? Leicester City 1, Tottenham Hotspur 1, because since then, a lot of Spurs fans have been very, very unhappy because in that first half, we just weren't clinical enough. We were 1-0 up at half time, but we could have been 3 or 4 up. And had we have been, I think these last few days, everyone would have been in an extremely good mood and a very different mood to what it's like now. This is a must-win game already for Spurs fans. Only second game of the season against Everton. Did you watch the game? What did you make of it?
I saw the vast majority. I mean, obviously at half time, it was very much a case of, chances missed. It was Tottenham on top. And, I thought, we were saying before the game on Monday as a podcast, there's been no game with more than 3 goals. And I had that game nailed on. for a comfortable Tottenham win, sort of 4-1, 5-1, because of I think Tottenham have done some decent business, but I think the attacking players that Spurs have got, Leicester had a few injury issues as well. Obviously, their first game back in the Premier League. I don't particularly rate their manager either. I just thought Spurs would sort of walk away with it. And really, you said at half-time, not clinical enough, missed opportunities, and it should have been so much difference. But I think the thing with Leicester is, when sides do come up to the Premier League, and as much as they've only been away for 12 months, home game, night game, first game of the season, their fans are quite lively anyway. It's never easy. You sort of don't want to play those sides early on in the season because they have got a little bit of wind behind them. They are sort of highly motivated and they feed off the crowd. As the season goes on, maybe things aren't going too well. That's when you want to start playing them. But it's never easy. I don't think going to Leicester, it is a difficult place. It's a lively place. But yeah, it was one of those games where you saw enough, I'm sure, as a Spurs fan to see there's a lot of positive signs here, and I think you wouldn't want a better first home game of the season than against us after us getting beaten against Brighton. So what I'll probably say to your fans is listen, don't panic. I'm sure come Saturday at 5:00, you'll be feeling quite a bit different than what you did after Monday.
We hope so. Mike, let's hear from Sean Dyche now. He had his press conference earlier today. He is expecting a big game and a big test.
They're all big games. I mean, I've said it ever since I've been there. Every game's a big game. There's people always laugh at me for saying that, but it is. It's Everton Football Club, regardless of the rules and reasons all go out the window. I've learned that. It's about winning. It's about taking on the next challenge. It's about reacting on this occasion. The storyline changes very quickly here, so we've got to correct it. It's a tough task going down to a very strong Tottenham side. We know that. They've invested heavily. They had a good season last season. We're stretched, unfortunately. We're down to about 14 recognised first-team players at the minute, so that's not perfect, but the challenge is right in front of us, as always.
Mike, 14 recognised first-team players. Wow. Who is out, and can you talk us through your summer transfer window as well?
Yeah, of course. That's I remember who is out. There's a lot of them. Going through the back four. So he mentioned today James Tarkowski. So he played the first game. I think he's got a little bit of a hamstring strain, so he's a doubt. Jared Branthwaite's definitely out. He had a groin operation over the course of the summer. Big miss. As we know, fantastic centre half. Seamus Coleman injured. Nathan Patterson, other right back, injured. He's longer term. He had an operation on his hamstring over the course of the summer. Ashley Young, fortunately suspended, so that's not too bad after 12 months of Ashley Young, and seeing obviously his age, I think, has caught up with him. It's as you saw again against Brighton, he's struggling to think now with the pace of things, and him starting, I think, against Son would have been a bit of a nightmare. However, Mason Holgate coming in is also a nightmare, but we'll go over that shortly. So in the back four alone, there's quite a few players out. You then look at James Garner, so central midfield, another player who's injured as well. So you're missing, 5-6 players who would 100% be in that squad, and that's the big issue that we've got, is we haven't got the players to come in and make the squad as good as it should be, because obviously what's behind that is not terrific. We know we've got limitations. We've had limitations for a while, and as I say, I think we certainly tried to address some of them in the course of this transfer window. But right back's a big issue. We've got a 39-year-old Ashley Young who was given another 12-month deal to be a squad player, and he's starting the first game because 35-year-old Seamus Coleman is injured. Nathan Patterson, who's fairly young, got brought in by Rafael Benitez. He was then sacked about 2 weeks later. And then, since Sean Dyche has come in, he's never fancied him in any way, shape or form. Frank Lampard seems to like him, but Sean Dyche never taken to him at all. So I think if he was fit, he'd be moved on. You go to the left-hand side, you've got Mikalenko and no one behind him. Ben Godfrey was sold to Atalanta in the summer. So there's no one to cover, really, Vitaly Mikalenko, hence why we've seen links today to Kieran Trippier, who can play either side in terms of left or right on loan. But in terms of what we have done, we brought in a young centre-half in Jake O'Brien from Lyon, formerly of Crystal Palace. Had a very good season last season at Lyon. Scored quite a few goals. I think he scored 5 or 6 goals as well. I think he was their second highest goal scorer. 6'6". He will start at the weekend because we've got probably Tarkowski out and Branthwaite's definitely out. So Jake O'Brien will come in. He's a big lad. Still, I think he's 23, so he's still fairly young, still learning his craft, but he looks to be one for the future, but one we're going to have to use, I think, over the course of this season starting Saturday. Jack Harrison obviously re-signed on loan for the second time from Leeds, so we know what Jack Harrison's all about, works hard, and product isn't really there at times, but Sean Dyche likes him because of his work rate. The pick of the bunch, well, I'll say the pick of the bunch of players who's made the biggest impression so far in pre-season and against Brighton is a lad called Tim Irabuna, who we brought in from Aston Villa. Some might see it as the PSR deal, which was when Lewis Dobbin went the other way to Aston Villa to try and help them with their PSR, and we got Irabuna to help us with ours. He's been terrific. I think he's 21 years of age, plays central midfield. He tired out against Brighton after about 65 minutes, understandably so. You know, the work he put in, great in the tackle, carries the ball really well, good with the ball at his feet. Learned a lot of things from Unai Emery at Aston Villa. So he's the pick for me, so keep an eye on him at the weekend. And then two players in Iliman Ndiaye, who played for Sheffield United and then moved across to Marseille when they got promoted, but Sheffield United got promoted to the Premier League. He was their best player in the Championship and the fans wanted him to stay. Obviously, I think Marseille was his boyhood club, so he went there. Struggled, to be fair, he was played out of position. Quick, carries the ball well, got an eye for goal, tricky. And then Jesper Lindstrom, who from Napoli on loan, who struggled over there after a couple of great seasons at Eintracht Frankfurt. You know, so they won the Europa League, beat Rangers in the final. So he was terrific there in Germany. Went to Napoli again. He went through about 3 or 4 managers, and it was not played in the right position. So another player who can carry the ball well, who's quick. You know, set pieces are good. Scored a great free kick in pre-season against Preston. He played for the 21s actually. Him and Beto played for under 21s against Tranmere in the what's it called now, the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, the old Papa John's or Paints Trophy as we once knew it, or Auto Windscreen trophy back in the day. So he played for the 21s in that, and he played the full 90, him and Beto, so I can't see him starting. But in terms of the business that's being done, we've tried to address gaps in the squad, and we've tried to address the lack of pace that we've got, but there's still areas where we are lacking. You know, another wide player certainly would be nice. Cover at right and left back would be nice as well, and another central midfielder. You know, we let Amadou Onana go to Aston Villa. We've been in for Calvin Phillips, who's obviously gone to Ipswich. He wanted city wages and we weren't prepared to pay them. But we need a bit more experience, I think, to take the pressure off Tim Irabuna, who's currently going to be asked to play alongside of Jessica Garner-Gay, because obviously James Garner's injured as well, and he's still playing Decore as the 10, which we think as time goes on, he might either drop back to central midfield or drop out to the side altogether.
Mike, staying on the subject of your manager, Sean Dyche, you mentioned earlier that some people are calling for him to go. How do the majority of the fans feel about him being there and the job that he has done so far? Because, you know, like I said earlier, you know, the amount of managers that you guys have gone through, very similar to Tottenham, you know, since 2019, including, you know, since then, Pochettino, we've had 7 managers in the dugout. You know, you can't keep going through different managers all the time. How do the majority of the fans feel about him?
I think, you know, we all understand when he was brought in. So bear in mind, we were going through a difficult time under Frank Lampard, and he was relieved of his duties in the January of 23. So then there was us, there was Leeds, there was Leicester. We were all floundering near the bottom of the table, and it was who pulled the trigger first, and we did. We got Sean Dyche in, and I think, you know, you look at when Leeds sacked Jesse March and then Leicester obviously sacked Brendan Rodgers. They would have wanted Sean Dyche as well, and we got in there first because we know his history at Burnley. He was a master at keeping sides up, basically, and with the best will in the world. That was his reputation. I think he's better than that in terms of, you know. But
shouldn't Everton be saying we want to be challenging for Europe rather than we just want to be staying in the Premier League?
100%. But I think what there needs to be a realisation that if we go back in time, so bear in mind when we brought in Ronald Koeman and we brought in a fella called Steve Walsh, as director of football. So he was the fellow who was responsible for signing Mahrez and Kante for Leicester. He was basically a scout, and Everton made him director of football. And they went out and they just brought in a pile of number 10s. Wayne Rooney, Davy Klaassen got brought in, Nikola Vlasic. We brought in Sandro, who flopped. We spent loads of money when we came in, some money when Farhad Moshiri came in, basically. And what happened was we're still paying for that now. So Everton can't afford to almost challenge, if you like, because as we've seen with the points deductions, we've been sailing close to the win for many, many years. We spent too much money. We haven't brought enough money in. We haven't reaped the rewards on the pitch to sort of get us out of a hole in terms of qualifying for Europe as well. We paid mega bucks for Carlo Ancelotti, to be minded. Yeah. We paid James Rodriguez $200,000 a week. We paid Alan big money. We paid these players big money and then got nothing for it, essentially. So because of all the mistakes that have been made and the gambles that have been made, we obviously went with Frank Lampard, and he was seen as very progressive, young manager. Proved himself a little bit, you'd argue, in terms of his time at Derby, his first into Chelsea when he couldn't buy anyone and had to use young players. So we thought that would be a good move. And the wheels obviously fell off when he went into his first full season. When by the time we got to the World Cup break, it wasn't looking fantastic, and it continued that way until he was sacked. So I think as Evertonians, of course, we want to be challenging for major honours. We want to be challenging to get into Europe. But there's been a realisation and a semi-acceptance that we're going to hold because of past mistakes. And we've got to adjust our expectations, because we can't be going into every season thinking, oh, we should be getting European football, because it's just not realistic. The players that we've got are players maybe sometimes limited, but players that this manager feels work hard. That's the main attribute. Give everything for the team. And want to work for him. So we've had to temper things because of the fact we've made so many mistakes. We want to get back there, and we feel that we will get back there. When we move to Bramley Moor and we get the opportunity to on a every other week be able to bring in 4 times more money than we do at Goodison Park. That's the first point. And secondly, the ground, as your ground has other events on, whether it be the NFL or whether it be boxing, pop concerts, whatever it might be. Bramley Moor will be exactly the same. And, we know that that's going to be our time to then start to climb back up. But in the meantime, we have to tread water. We have to be careful. We have to temper expectations. And we have to be realistic, because going into a season and expecting more than that, you're going to be even more disappointed than we are, given the state of the football club as it is. So I think, once Moshiri clears off, once we get a bit more stability off the pitch, once we move into the new ground, we can then start to look forward. In the meantime, we've got to almost accept, listen, this manager's here. He deserves, I think, to be here, given what he's done, because he's done every single job in that football club because of circumstances. He's the one who's been answering questions every single week in press conferences, whether it be to do with the ownership, whether it be to do with the battles with the board that we've had, whether it be to do with the fact we've got no money, whether it be to do with the fact, where's the money coming from for Bramley Moor. And, he's had to deal with absolutely everything that's been thrown at him. So he deserves that opportunity. But do I think Sean Dyche is going to be the manager for the next 3-4 years? No, I wouldn't expect him to be. And it's no slight on him at all. I think the job will take its toll on him as well. And coming the end of the season, he's out of contract. Does he sign a new one? Maybe he doesn't want to either. But I think we will start to look forward once, I think, almost we can get the weight of Goodison Park and what's happened at Goodison Park in recent years from around our neck, and then start to look forward.
Mike, of course, Sean Dyche had his press conference on Thursday. He said it's unlikely that you're going to have a busy final week in the transfer window. He also confirmed that shifting big-name assets like Branthwaite is not likely. He dismissed rumours about Kieran Trippier being linked to the football club. Let's get his thoughts on the upcoming game against Spurs.
Away games, they're challenges everywhere you go, and you want to go to these places. Particularly, you'd class Tottenham currently in the top 6, that's for sure, or that most people would. And it's a big challenge, and we are thin in numbers, but we have to go down there and take on the game like we always do.
Mike, he said there most people would class Tottenham as a top 6 side. How do you class Tottenham? When you look at Tottenham nowadays, what do you think of our squad, our ground, the way that we haven't won a trophy since 2008? How do you view Spurs as an Everton fan?
I think Spurs, in a sense, are very similar to us in one sense. Obviously, you're ahead of the game because you got the new ground, as I say, fantastic stadium. And I think that probably Spurs fans now are potentially looking to reap the rewards of that. You know, everything's there. Everything is available to you. You know, you've spent some decent money, I would argue, certainly compared to us. But, you know, that's not difficult. But you spent some decent money over the last couple of years or so. But I think the problem always is when it, like you said, the managers that you've had over the last so many years, it's the changing of managers all the time. If you want to win something, you know, when you're not Manchester City and you're not, I suppose, Liverpool in a sense, although, you know, as much as people might say Jurgen Klopp did a fantastic job, he spent big money and didn't win many trophies either. But that's a story for another day. But I think that when you're not Manchester City and, you know, you've got the wealth of riches, the infrastructure's all there, has been there for years. You've got their own fiddling the books and things like that. You know, it's one of those where you've got to look at, okay, well, where are we now? How do we get to the next level? And the best way to do it is to stick with the manager. And I think that, you know, maybe Conte wasn't a great fit, I'd probably say. I think he's always a manager who sort of lingers around for maybe 2 or 3 years. Postecoglou's got to be given time. That's the thing. You know, we saw the start of last season, how you started the season. It was a little bit suicide at times in certain, I mean, you know better than me, but some of the things I saw was like, you know, that was Goodison Park. People would be losing their hair every single week, given how high the line was and things like that. But I think give the manager time, let him build a squad that fits into his style of football. But then it's got to be also a cultural thing as well. Spurs have got to have a culture and a way of playing, so managers fit into the Spurs way. But I do think it always centres around ensuring that the manager's given the right time. You know, he's given the support from the board and the owner in terms of money to spend. Obviously, sensibly. You know, you can't just say start splashing the cash. He's proven, I think, in that first season what he's got to offer. Spurs were certainly an exciting side to watch. Sometimes, obviously, for yourself, you know, for the neutral, fantastic. For yourself, I'm sure at times it's difficult. But I think everything's there. The ingredients are there. Tottenham should be, you know, if you look at the table now, the top three are probably the top three, aren't they, in terms of City, Arsenal, Liverpool at the moment. We saw Aston Villa nick the Champions League spot last season. You know, United, I don't think they're fantastic. Newcastle, you know, they're okay. You know, I put Spurs currently above those two sides, and it was between you and Villa for me in terms of last season to get that final Champions League spot. So certainly a top six side, a side that should be, I think, challenging for that final Champions League spot. But obviously, I'm sure as a fan base, you're absolutely striving to win a trophy as well as we all are. You know, you'd sacrifice probably finishing. I know I would sacrifice finishing fourth for a Carabao Cup, because it's the end of the day, what do you support a team for, and what do you play for? You play to win trophies. That's how I see it. So, you know, whatever the trophy is, League Cup, FA Cup, whatever it might be, Europa Conference, Europa League, get the trophies up, because that's what you want to see as a fan. That's the reward as a football fan. But Tottenham got everything there. You know, the ground, the players, the manager. Just give the manager time and let him build a squad.
Yeah, it's fair to say that both of our clubs are way overdue trophies. And what I do love about Goodison Park is when you walk around it, there is so much history on the outside of the stadium. I wonder how much of that they will actually include on the new stadium. Probably not a lot, I would imagine. How are you feeling ahead of this game, Mike? Because, you know, you've just lost 3-0 at home against Brighton. You mentioned about the high line. You know, some fans absolutely love it. Some are a little bit worried. And Postecoglou just doesn't change the way that he approaches games and the way that he manages games. How do you see this game going? Are you looking forward to it? Are you a bit nervous? Do you think that Everton are going to show up? And do you think Everton are going to score goals at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium?
I don't think I'm nervous. I think what gets me nervous is obviously having to go into the last games of the season, trying to stay in the Premier League, and we've all been there, you know, in recent times. So that's what gets me nervous. I think, you know, I'm going there not expecting a great deal is probably the best way to look at it. I think with the injuries, it doesn't help. I think when you lose the first game in the manner that we did, making those mistakes, and it looks terrible on paper. It looks awful on paper. Most of the crowd got off. I stayed until the end. But it was difficult, believe me. There's a bit of a bad taste in the mouth. Now the players have got to want to respond. It is difficult, as I say, given the injuries. Everton will go to Tottenham and try and be difficult to beat. I think what showed when we went there last season was in and around Christmas. It was a game. Obviously, you come away with a 2-1 win. We had a goal disallowed for nothing. We would always argue and feel we should have got something from the game. But it was a game that was hotly contested. Both sides had chances. So there's no reason why we can't do the same again. But I think it's going to be difficult because going to any ground for their first home game of the season, it's always an added intensity. And I think the players are even more up for the game than he would be normally. So it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't expect a great deal. We'll probably be competitive for maybe the first 45 minutes to an hour. Injuries and small squad side might take its toll. But I think with Sean Dyche, he's never one for making a raft of changes anyway, to be honest with you. I think he made one of the minds where he made one of the least amount of substitutes last season, which says it all. He trusts certain players. That's what you find with him. So, obviously the substitutes you've got at your disposal, quite often you make one, maybe two, and sometimes it'd be in the 90th minute as well. So it's one of those games where I think that fatigue will play a big factor with us. Lack of squad size will impact. So I don't expect a great deal, to be honest with you. I think probably the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is when the Emote comes on, given the fact he's got a bit of history with yourselves from last season.
Mike, interestingly, in the press conference, Sean Dyche was asked about the under-21s because he went to watch them in the last couple of days. Will he give any chances to the under-21 players? Because interestingly, he said they've got to be ready. It's a huge step up from playing in Premier League 2 football to then going into the Premier League. But has he given the youth a chance since his arrival at Goodison?
I mean, most would say no. Fans are crying out to bring in a young lad called Roman Dixon, who's a right fullback. Really, really quick, played for the 21s. I think he's 19 years of age, turns 20 in a few weeks' time. And, we should sign a new deal in the summer. Really highly thought of. But the step up from the 21s to man's football, so to speak, is absolutely massive. The step is huge. And you've got to be a real talent, I think, to be playing football on the Premier League stage week in, week out, under the age of 20, to be honest. You see it now and again, of course you do. But just because you've got maybe some decent players at under 21 level doesn't mean at that age it can be replicated within the first team. And I mean, he would argue, obviously, Tim Irabunum started against Brighton. I think that was almost that he had to. I think if James Garner was fit, he wouldn't have started him. He does love this whole thing around trust and Premier League experience. So he's not one really for giving youth a chance. I mean, the only one you could argue since he's come in was probably Branthwaite. That was because he had to again. Michael Keane started the season last season, had a couple of really poor games, and then he came in, Branthwaite in the third game of the season and just didn't look back. And same with Jake O'Brien. Fans were saying last weekend, there's no Jared Branthwaite, so we should be starting with James Tarkowski. And he started Michael Keane, which I said on the Friday, he won't be starting O'Brien, he'll start Michael Keane, because he likes to go with trust and plays with Premier League experience. So he's a manager who's probably traditional in that sense. But, looking at the players again, I watched the 21s played Samia in the Football League Trophy the other day, and no one really. There's one player called Harrison Armstrong who's had a good pre-season with the first team, plays central midfield. But he was in and around the squad for Brighton. But he's not going to bring him on, or I don't think give him any kind of minutes unless maybe winning the game by 4 or 5 goals, which is not going to happen. So, no, I don't think there's any danger at the weekend of seeing any of the 21s given the nod, to be honest with you, despite the fact that we've only got 14 first-team players fit. Yeah.
Mike, talking about Jared Branthwaite, are you surprised that he's still an Everton player? Of course, he won't be playing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday, but you must be surprised as an Everton fan that he is still there, given the financial situation. You would have thought that the club would have cashed in, particularly a lot of interest from Premier League clubs, including Man United.
Yeah, I think Me personally, I thought he'd stay. I always had him in mind he would stay. It would have been more difficult if he would have gone to the Euros with England, I think, and had the same kind of tournaments as Mark Gay. You can see now that's bumped his price up, and Newcastle are sniffing around and they're closer to getting a deal done with Crystal Palace. But I think from our perspective, I was always pretty hopeful, but also confident as well that he was going to stay. I think that he will go next summer. He'll go basically, and he will dictate at an even higher price than he has done this season. You know, United coming in, low ball on us, thinking that, you know, you need the money, and Everton battered it away, and rightly so. You know, he's worth a lot of money to us, given how important he was last season. You know, he walked away with multiple awards in our end of season awards. So he's worth a lot of money to this football club because of the fact that he's one of the main reasons why we stayed in the Premier League. You know, he's left-footed. He's big, he's strong, he's quick, great in the tackle, great in the air. You know, he brings balance to any back four. So left-footed centre-halves are difficult to find, generally speaking, at that particular level. So he's worth a lot of money, and he'll be worth even more next summer. So I was, as I say, I'm a huge fan of his, and grateful that he's ours. Grateful he had a fantastic season on loan at PSV. Went away from the limelight of the Premier League and learned his trade and did really well. And you know, he's gonna bring in a lot of money next summer. But I was confident he'd stay because of the fact that Onana was always going to go. That was always going to be one big sale that we were going to have this summer. He was one of the players who always sort of, within his plan, it wasn't to stay at Everton for more than 2 years. He's gone to Aston Villa, Champions League football. I think he's a terrific footballer. He's got a fantastic career ahead of him. I think he'll go on again to an even bigger club. But Branthwaite will go on and be probably one of our best ever sales that we will ever see. That's how good he is. Yeah. And it's just a shame that you won't see him on Saturday and he's not in our back four.
But of course, he scored a 94th minute equaliser in the 2-2 draw at Goodison in February. Since the Premier League started in 92, the sides have met 64 times, Spurs winning 30 of them, 25 draws and only 9 Everton wins. At the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, or of course White Hart Lane, 20 Tottenham wins, 4 Everton wins and 8 draws. Mike, this fixture, do you like this fixture?
No, never have. You know, and you've read the stats off there, but no, we've never liked it. It's a strange one. You know, it's very rare, home or away, that we get much from Scotland. I remember growing up as well as a kid and could never think of anything really where we would pick up anything from yourselves. The one I remember was probably at Goodison Park when we scored 2 in the 90th minute. Was a P&R and Yelovich to come back from 1-0 down. I think Clint Dempsey scored for you. That was the only one I really sort of can think back to. Away from home, no, absolute disaster when we go to it, whether it was White Hart Lane or obviously to your new stadium there. I went to our first visit there when it finished 2-2, last game of the season, which was a decent game, but a bit of fun in the sun because Man City won the title, Liverpool lost it on the last day of the season, so we were all keeping an eye on that as well. But a fixture that's never served us particularly kindly is probably the best way to look at it. It's strange. It's just sometimes, you know, you have bogey teams and Spurs appear to be one of ours.
But of course, the last time you won the FA Cup in '95, Everton knocked Spurs out in the semi-final. I always remember Daniel Amakachi, of course, at Ellen Road. What a day that was. That
was the only goal we conceded in that FA Cup run in that particular year, which was a penalty, which shouldn't really be a penalty either, in my opinion. But yeah, Amakachi brought himself on, didn't he? Because poor Radek wanted to go back on. Amakachi had already gone on, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it seems crazy, Mike, doesn't it? Spurs last won the FA Cup in '91, Everton '95. We're starved of these trophies.
Starved, massively starved, yeah. And, you know, you look at the current climate and landscape of football, especially in this country, but and beyond, and you're just wondering when it's going to end. You know, when we're going to get that opportunity to go and win a trophy again. You seem to, even, you know, City seems to win the Carabao Cup every year. Liverpool always seem to do well in it. And, you know, the likes of, you know, going back to when Swansea won it and teams like that, and Birmingham beat Arsenal in the final, those days just seem to be behind us in a way, which is a real shame. And you know, we do anything to pick up, like I said, a Carabao Cup, FA Cup, mean the world to us, as you say, as fans. That's what we want to see is your club climbing the steps at Wembley and picking up a trophy. That's what you want to see. You know, I was there in '95 against Manchester United, and he would have told me on that day as a 10-year-old kid, you won't see this again. You know what I mean? And we're now by 2024, you want to win a trophy again. I would not have believed you, but that's the way football's gone. And you know, is it going to take the bubble to burst, or the Super League to come in and what have you inside to go away for us to get our opportunity? But yeah, it's been a difficult time since 1995. That's for sure.
Mike, I expect Ange Postecoglou to make a couple of changes from this Leicester game. Of course, Bentancur went off injured due to Premier League protocol. He won't be able to feature in the game against Everton. So I expect this to be the starting 11 for Tottenham on Saturday. Vicario in goal, the back four of Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Udogie. In midfield, Archie Gray, Sarr, Maddison. And then the front three of Kulusevski, Solanke and Son. Kulusevski, I'm expecting to come in and replace Brennan Johnson. Of that team that I have named there, which players worry you in that team?
I think one which might be a bit of an out there shout is probably Porro. I massively rate him. I massively rate him as a fullback, as an attacking fullback especially. Always gets to be points in my fantasy team, that's for sure. And he'll probably stay in this weekend as well, because he'll be a little bit of a softener if he might get something from the game. But I think that, you know, I think he's a very good fullback. I look at the signing of obviously Solanke. I think it's a very good sign. I think it's what Spurs have needed is a proper number 9. You know, even Kane, the goals he scored obviously terrific, but he's not a sort of, for me, as a typical number 9. You know better than me how deep he used to drop in and work for him. You know, we see it in England all the time. But Solanke, I think he's got a decent goal scoring record against us. He's a decent centre forward. Probably you know what, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, if he didn't have his injuries, him and Solanke and Watkins and Villa, very, very similar level, I think, on the day. But he's a real threat. Son's always a threat, of course he is. You know, he's been a pain for us over the years. So I think sort of those three, especially for me, are ones that I sort of look out for and keep an eye on, because I think they are really dangerous players. But obviously throughout the side, you know, you've got a good balance there. You've got quality. It'd be interesting to see how Gray plays, the young kid, obviously from Leeds. Big money that you spent on him. Good reputation. I saw bits of him last season in the Championship, and he seems to be a decent player. Obviously very, very young. So it's whether we can get to grips. Obviously with our midfield too, you're probably going to see Decore drop back in to try and sort of go man to man almost in a way there. He's going to have to help out our two lads in midfield as well. But then that leaves Dominic Calvert-Lewin massively isolated, which we see time and again. So a lot of pressure on him to sort of bring the ball down, draw fouls, try and bring the wide players in. But there's plenty of players there that Spurs have got at the disposal. I mean, you saw Richarlison and Goodison last season. Probably, you know, we would score 2 better goals. And he saved it for Goodison Park. You know, so even him, as much as he hasn't had a fantastic time at Spurs, comes off the bench, he's always a threat. You know, so it's going to be a difficult game. There's plenty of players there, especially with Michael Keane playing centre half with Jake O'Brien, new lad with an experienced centre half who needs talking through games. You know, even, you know, Michael Keane at his age, he really struggles when he hasn't got a communicator alongside him. So it could be a long afternoon for ourselves, I think.
Mike, before I get your predicted lineup, I want to ask you a little bit about Dele Alli, because Sean Dyche was asked about him in the press conference and said he is not ready. What have you made of Dele Alli in an Everton shirt? What do you think the future holds for him? And I also wanted to get your opinion on last season at one of the Spurs home games. I actually met Dele Alli. He come through the stand that I was in. Everton were actually playing that day, but he was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium watching Spurs. What did the Everton fan base make of that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of things last season in terms of, you know, you had that situation when he was at Spurs, and you had the last game of the season at Goodison Park as well, when obviously the players go round and, you know, do the lap of appreciation, and he wasn't there for that either. Everton fans weren't too pleased, more so with that, to be honest with you, because obviously very sort of difficult time for him, which Everton fans backed him, and rightly so. You know, there was a fantastic banner at the ground after his interview with Gary Neville. So we sort of felt maybe even just being there just to give a bit back, because the club supports them, and rightly so, fantastically, continue to do so. Sean Dyche does. I think he sees a lot of them, and he wants them to get back playing football. He's got a fantastic support network at the club. And by all accounts, he wants to be there, because he could have gone back to Spurs this summer to train, and he stayed at Everton, you know, so he's still there now trying to get back to full fitness. I think, you know, everyone will say it hasn't really worked out, has it? Let's get it right. It was one of those at the time where Frank Lampard had been there, I think, for a day, and he brought him in with Donny van der Beek. His best moment was when he came on against Crystal Palace in that game, which we turned around to stay in the Premier League, 2-0 down at half time. Then he comes on at half time and had a fantastic second half, you know, and was a big factor why we scored those 3 goals as well. But then that was it, you know, difficult pre-season, goes on loan to Besiktas, gets injured, has a few issues with their owner, comes back, obviously had issues with his hip, has not been seen since. So in terms of as an Everton player, I think some Everton players, if you're going to be honest, would say, well, we paid them big money and just not seeing him. You know, you could argue we got a good deal, but there was a reason why we got that deal from Tottenham. And we've had to then sort of barter that down again further this summer to say, well, it's out of contract, but I think there was still a stipulation that if we did sign a new deal with Everton, we had to pay Spurs 10 million quid. And Everton said, come on, you know, he's been through a hell of a lot. I think is probably one of the key factors that was brought to the table. He's still miles away from fitness. Obviously, he's happy in terms of being at the club, the environment that he's in. The manager likes him. Even now, I'm not 100% sure he'll be given any kind of deal. If we're being honest, you know, if the toss-up is between giving Dele Alli a contract in some way, shape or form, or getting some competent right-back cover or a new central midfielder on loan, we go for that, because that's what we need. We can't have a player who we might not ever see, or he might come in 3-4 months' time. And even then, you know, we hasn't played football for 2 years nearly. How are we going to react to playing professional football every week of the year almost, or every week for so many months? And that's the gamble, isn't it? And I don't think we can afford to take a gamble. We'd love to see him rectify his career, but I think it's going to be away from Everton. If I'm being honest, I could be totally wrong, because the manager loves him, and I think he's invested a lot of time in him, and he wants to get him back playing football. But I think that, if we're being brutally honest, I just can't see it being maybe a Premier League level. It might be that he calls it a day. I always thought with Dele that he peaked at about 21, 22, you know, and unfortunately, you know, that's what happens. Michael Owen was the same, you know, injuries and other things take hold, and you go in a downward spiral from about 25. And that's what we've seen with Dele, unfortunately. But, you know, we want to see him back playing football. It'd be fantastic if he can get back, but I'm not sure whether it'll be with us.
Well, every Spurs fan certainly wishes him all of the very best, and hopefully it does work out at Everton. Hopefully we see him back playing Premier League football very, very soon. Mike, give us a stab at having a predicted lineup. I know it's going to be very difficult for you given all of the injury issues you've got, but who do you think Sean Dyche will go with on Saturday?
Jordan Pickford in goal, obviously. The easiest pick of the weekend. Michalenko left back. Probably the 2 centre halves would be Keane and O'Brien. Mason Holgate has got to play right back by the looks of it, because there's nobody else. Another player we've been trying to get rid of for about 2 years. But he's going to have to play, which is a bit of a nightmare, because he's one of those. He's like a young version of Ashley Young in terms of he's always got a yellow card on him, and then he gets booked early, and he's up against obviously players with real quality, and then he ends up getting sent off. So there's a prediction. If you want to put a bet on the weekend, Mason Holgate red card is a good bet. Midfield 2 of Irabunam and Ojisagana Gay. Wide players left will be McNeil, Dwight McNeil. Right will be Jack Harrison. He'll probably go with Decore in the 10 again, I would think, and then Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front.
Match officials for this game, the referee will be Anthony Taylor, VAR Andy Madley, and I just wanted to get your opinion, Mike, on the semi-automated offside and the VAR, you know, the slightly different version of VAR this season. I know last time you were on, you didn't speak very highly of the match officials and VAR. Do you still feel the same?
Yeah, nothing has changed. I mean, with this semi-automated offside should have been brought in for week 1. I don't know why we're waiting until September. What the delay is. If you want to change things up over the course of the summer, have it available for the first week. That's the first point. Because I don't think it's a bad thing. I think if it makes things more clear cut, then I'm all for it. The match officials are the match officials. I said it last time. They hide behind the fact that they've got VAR, that they've got people 200 miles away from the stadium refereeing the game. It showed when we were given a penalty at the weekend. You've got Simon who were going to the monitor that wasn't even working. Apparently, he looked at the second monitor that was in the briefcase. I don't really believe him. I think he was getting word into his ear. I think if they're not going to get involved, or as much as they were, and they're going to let the on-field official get on with things a bit more, why wasn't that a penalty against Brighton? Because there was contact. So whether you think it was a bit soft or not, was it enough to overturn it? We could argue that probably till the cows come home. So the officials, Anthony Taylor, another one, they're all the same for me. It doesn't matter who's in charge. They're all told the referee a certain way. And is it going to be light to touch? The first weekend says yes, no. It's not going to be light to touch. They're still interfering in situations when really don't need to interfere in them, because the referee's on the spot and he's given a decision. If there's contact, on we go. And I just think that VAR, the problem with VAR is always the people who are operating VAR. That's always the problem. The actual concept is fine as long as people are competent in doing their job. And I think what's shown since it's come in is that people maybe aren't. And there's so much on the line, isn't there, every single week, especially when it comes to whether it be titles, relegation, Europe, money, prize money, things like that, that the referee things, in so much detail. And you just think sometimes, let's get on with the football. There's so much stop-start. Even now at the ground, again, going back to the Brighton game, they're taking an age to show a decision. If it goes to VAR, that's fine. But then put it on the screen so we can see. So when you've come to your decision, let's see. So the offside for Jack Harrison against Brighton was offside. It was obviously offside. It took them about 3 minutes to show it on the screen. Well, it's dead easy. I can tell you it's offside, and I was at the other end of the ground. So let's just be sensible about it. But whilst the money is so big in the Premier League, it's going to be like this, isn't it? And I hope they can sort things out and make things quicker, because as I think fans in the stadium are the ones who lose out. I think it's very much now more case to the fan at home and fan watching around the world. Very, very Americanized. I said it last season. You'll start to see VAR decisions being sponsored at some point. And that's the way it'll go, because it'll bring money in. It's very Americanized. They'll put it in the corner of the screen maybe, or put the main footage in the screen and put VAR as the big picture, have it sponsored and things like that, because it's all about money. And as I say, as a fan spectacle in the stadium, it kills things. We know the emotion at times is gone, because you want, you score a 93rd minute winner, you want to go off your head, and what's the first thing that you do? You're looking around, referee, screen, linesman, assistant, what's going on. Your first thought now is not to go off your head. It's to look around. And that should never be the case. That should never be the case. It's all about, football, sport is about emotion, living in the moments, and VAR, for me, totally kills it.
I'll tell you what, Mike, VAR during the Euros, I was lucky enough to go out to a number of the games at Euro 2024, and being in the stadium, which I am, of course, every home and away Spurs game, I find it really difficult not to know certain things, what is actually happening in the ground. But during Euro 2024, you knew everything. Being a fan inside the stadium, you knew exactly what was going on. They put really great descriptions on the boards. That is exactly what needs to happen in the Premier League. I said it during the summer, and I hope that does happen, and hopefully that does improve. Mike, before we get your score prediction for the game, we've got a short clip from Pat Nevin, of course, Everton winger between 1988 and 1992, also a BBC 5 Live pundit. Let's hear from Pat Nevin, and then we'll get your score prediction for the game.
Hi there, it's good to be on the podcast. Hope you're all well, Chris particularly. Couple of things to say about the upcoming game. Looking forward to coming down for it. Live in Scotland, but I'll be down at the lane for thoughts on Ange and his time at Spurs so far. Well, to be fair, the excitement I saw some of the games last season was fantastic, particularly down at home. There was a game against Manchester United I was at, which was, if any Spurs fans were there, you know what it felt like. It was absolutely incredible. And there's been quite a few of them this season. And consider some of the problems previously, with not the most exciting football in the world. It's a vast improvement and much more enjoyable. It's not perfect yet under Ange. It's going to be difficult because it's an extreme version of football, as any Spurs fan will know, and any Celtic fan who watched them beforehand will know as well. But it's exciting, and certainly something that you kind of know and hope will improve and get better. But it's all about getting Ange's group together, Ange's type of players that he needs. This is one transfer window that he's had, really, maybe 1.5. He needs a few more players in. Interesting the ones that he's got in this season, seeing if they're going to work. But I don't know. I think most Spurs fans, in reality, when you look back last few years, okay, there's no winning Premier Leagues at the moment, but hey, it's been good fun to watch and it's exciting. So I think it's a good thing. And by the way, I just like Ange, like everybody else, because there's no BS. Spurs and Everton game coming up on Saturday. As I say, I'm going to be down for that, covering it for the BBC. I was at Stamford Bridge last week, so it's interesting to see some of the top teams and where they are at just now. Certainly Spurs and Chelsea didn't look quite... Spurs, Man City and Chelsea didn't look quite at their very, very best this early in the season. But I don't know, just looking at the way Spurs start, and particularly at home, this should be a game that you should win. I mean, even against Leicester, there's no doubt in that first half particularly, that game should have been out of sight. But, you know, play at home, you know, first game of the season, the excitement is going to be, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the buzz of that. But it's not going to be easy. The way that Everton play, I mean, they obviously a stinker, we'll go on to that in a minute. But the way Everton play, you know, it's kind of hard to break down. Obviously, they played with 10 men. Brighton hammered them 3-0, but there was a questionable penalty kick down to 10 men, so it's kind of hard to gauge really. Look, Everton have struggled for a variety of reasons, usually mostly because they haven't got the finances to be able to deal with what other people can spend. But Sean Dyche gets a tune out of them, and I think it was 14 points. Even after the points that were deducted last season, they managed to stay in the Premier League. That's astonishing, right? That's amazing. So well done them for managing to do that. But he has to pull out miracles every season and almost every week, Sean Dyche. But they're capable of doing that. And as I say, they could play 5 at the back on Saturday. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. And if you get 5 good defenders that are working hard and are well organised, hard to break down. So it's not a foregone conclusion, this one, even though without a shadow of a doubt Spurs are favourites to win this one. But remember last season, it was tight, a 2-2 and a 2-1 in the league, so not a great deal in it, and don't be surprised if it's close. Successful season for both clubs. Look, Everton, I was going to say survival in the Premier League, but survival period might be the thing. The finances are a shambles. The debt is unbelievable. There's been fear of relegation season on season now. You cannot keep on doing that every year. 1 year you get massive injuries and then you can't save it. So Everton, they have to stick by Sean Dyche. I think he's about the only coach who could keep them going because of the limitations of the quality in the squad. But the fact that, if you let him go and somebody has to restart again mid-season, it could be disastrous for him. So staying in the league is Everton, and staying alive and getting a new buyer. That's success for Everton this season. Spurs, success? Great thought. I think Spurs fans should look for top 4. I mean, it was close last season. If you look at it historically over the last 10 years or so, it's been around 4th, 5th, 6th, that sort of thing. But top 4, we all know what that means. And you want to get there. And Ange Postecoglou is capable of putting together a team. And there's good enough players. And you look at the likes of, obviously Richarlison, well, particularly against Everton. he tends to score. Was it 3 he scored last season in the 2 games? So, we know Sonny's a fantastic player. Interesting to see what's going to happen with the players that have been brought in. Certainly, Werner's a hard worker. You probably know about him already. Limitations as well, but he'll give you everything. Solanke's the most interesting one of them all. The great season last season, but maybe not quite so much so the season before that. And Spurs is a big old club, and you've got big shoes to fill there. So that's Dom. Good luck with that one. That's going to be a hard one, but good luck. I suppose on top of everything else, keep Maddison fit. That's what I would say. And if you do that, probably going to be all right. He's quality. Love him as a player. If you're asked to give a score prediction, I don't do predictions. I do guesses because I don't know what's going to happen, and neither does anybody. But I wouldn't be surprised at a 2-1. Probably for Spurs. Everton might sneak a draw if they defend incredibly well, but they'll need to defend well and get lots of luck as well. I was going to say, obviously, former Everton player, where my heart would lie, but as I'm working for the BBC on Saturday, I'm not allowed to say that. So may the best team win.
Mike, what did you make of Pat's comments there? And many thanks to Pat Nevin, by the way, for giving his thoughts ahead of the game. He said that don't be surprised if it's going to be close. I feel exactly the same, and I agree with a lot of what he said there. Both games last season, a 2-2 and a 2-1. I'm actually going to predict a 2-1 Spurs win on Saturday. What are you going for, and what did you make of Pat's comments?
I know Pat was sort of very, very negative last week about the club, and he sort of, I think, replicated that in what he said about survival in terms of the club, not in terms of Premier League survival, but the club. I think he's been maybe a tad dramatic, is what I would say. However, it's easy, I think, to sort of read that way because of the current situation around our finances. And he said he was concerned for us this season, but as I say, I think there's a bit more calm around things. I think as a former player, it can be, I think, quite emotional at times when you see clubs that you play for be in the state that we've been in and we continue to be in as well. So the last thing you want when you've got an emotional attachment is to see a club struggle the way that we have. So I totally get what he says and why he says it. But in terms of the game, I've done this prediction, I think, a few times now this week from our podcast to another Spurs wants it. It's obviously tonight. And I think my head says we get beat 3-1. I think it's going to be a bit of a stretch for us. My heart says that I can see another 2-2 draw, which I would take in an absolute heartbeat, by the way.
We would
right now. But no, I think it's going to be difficult for us. I think more than likely we will lose the game. I think that's probably the best prediction that I can make. But, football, it's a funny old game. And at times in adversity, when you're missing so many players, when you've had such a poor start to the season in that first game, sometimes things can just turn on their head and you do see surprising results, especially at the start of football season. So maybe, just maybe, something goes our way for once. But I'll go head 3-1 Spurs, heart 2-2 draw.
Mike, I've got to ask you, and I can't believe we're almost an hour and 15 in this podcast. I've not even mentioned Richarlison. Of course, Pat Nevin said there, 3 goals against Everton, of course, former side last season. What have you made of Richarlison in the Spurs shirt? Because a lot of us, most of Spurs fans want it to work for Richarlison, but he had a good patch last year, but he's had a hard couple of years at Tottenham on the pitch and off the pitch. And I think if you were to sum up Richarlison's Spurs career so far, it was probably that chance against Leicester, literally the last chance of the game, him missing the target, which was very, very frustrating because I suppose I feel a little bit like, Ange Postecoglou has said so often in his opening 12 months at the club where we are so wasteful and, there is so much growth to come in that final third. Well, Richarlison has been quite wasteful, certainly last year. Brennan Johnson, Timo Werner, players like that really need to step up this year. But with Richarlison, what have you made of him in a Spurs shirt? And do you think that he can come good and find that consistency in a Spurs shirt?
I mean, the Richarlison that we know and love, obviously at times we've not seen it at Spurs. There's times when we have, you watch him and he works so hard. I watch him, and one thing you can never ever say that he does is share responsibility. We know at the back end of his Everton career, he played. I mean, at that Palace game, he should be nowhere near the pitch. And he loved Everton Football Club. The fans loved him. And we know he had to move, and he moved because of the fact that we needed the money. It was as simple as that. And I think if in an ideal world, and that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have gone anywhere. That's just how it is. Sometimes players fit certain clubs, and I think that it was a match made in heaven, and we'd have him back in a heartbeat. We're still got some kind of hope that maybe on loan in some kind of parallel universe he can come back to us over the next 7 days or so. But it's hard at Spurs, isn't it? Because the player that he was for us, I think he would argue that he likes to play centrally, and for Brazil, he scored most of his goals playing as a central striker. I don't really think it suits him. I think he's better in a two. He was always, I think, when him and Calvert-Lewin played together as a two, it always worked in tandem. They were really good. But I think he's good from the left, coming in his right foot. At pace, he's always had pace, but injuries have killed him a little bit at Spurs, and I think that's maybe a hangover from his time at Everton, because he was playing so many games at the back end of his time with us injured, as I said. So I think maybe that sort of caused a few issues, and I think when he's not getting games consistently, and obviously he'll come back in, might get a few games, and he gets dropped, and doesn't help either. So it's probably for him, it's probably been a bit of a disappointing move for him, really, because he's a player who's immensely proud to be a footballer. Doesn't take it for granted. He does so much for his community in Brazil, and he's so proud to wear a football shirt, never mind one in the Premier League, and obviously his national team as well. So I think he knows it probably hasn't worked. It was convenience. It was a move of convenience for us. At the time, we'd argue that you got a decent deal because we thought that he was worth more. You'd probably say now that he wasn't worth more. But I think he's probably got to move. I think he needs to maybe now go somewhere else. I know there's been talk of Saudi. I don't want to see him go over there. And, for me, if you want to go there and earn big money, then you go over there at the back end of your career. And he said, hasn't he, pretty much, I want to be playing football, whether it be the Premier League or European football. He doesn't want to be going to Saudi with the best will in the world. So I think it's one to watch at the back end of the window is for Charlton moving. As I say, love him to come back to our football club. Don't think it's going to be doable in any way, shape or form. But he's a fabulous footballer, a fabulous person, and we wish him all the luck in the world.
Yeah, Mike, don't get me wrong. I love him. I think he's fantastic with the fans as well. But I just really want to see the Everton version of Richarlison in a Spurs shirt. That's what I'd love to see. Serious question for you. We mentioned Braithwaite earlier, and you say you want Richarlison back. Would you swap?
No.
A genuine question.
No.
You don't want him back that much then?
No, it's two different things. I think at this moment in time, I think we couldn't afford to lose Braithwaite.
Yeah.
To make way for somebody in a different position. I think I'd be hugely concerned if Braithwaite went, and then we were left with four centre halves in. James Tarkowski obviously is decent, and Jake O'Brien, new really to the Premier League. Let's be honest, he didn't play once for Palace in the Premier League. And then Michael Keane and Mason Holgate, I'd be massively concerned, because no matter what you do at the top end of the pitch, you ain't going to keep the goals out to the other end of the pitch, and that would be the real concern. That's how good Braithwaite is, by the way, and how important he is. So no, that wouldn't work. But if you said to me now, Dominic Calvert-Lewin for Richarlison, I will go for it because of the current situation around his contract, and we won't sign a new deal, and he's only got less than 12 months left. That's a different kind of thing. But Richarlison, with Braithwaite at Everton, would be a dream come true.
Yeah. Mike, you've been an absolutely fantastic guest. Love having you on again. So thank you so much, and look forward to having you back on again very soon. Where can people find you on social media? Tell everyone about the podcast, how they can find it, see it, and listen and watch.
Yeah, it's across your usual platform. So Spotify, Apple Store, or what's it on? It used to be called iTunes, didn't it? All across there. Megaphone as well, which is a Spotify platform. Sports Social Podcast Network is the network that we're on. Do a little bit on YouTube now and again, more so in pre-season when we deal with the transfers. social media, we are at UHT Podcast on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at UHT Podcast Everton on Instagram and Threads as well. So that's where you will find us.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. You've been a great guest, as I say. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. And let's hope that Spurs can get their first win of the season at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Mike, enjoy the game, not too much. And until the next time, come on, you Spurs.